Alright, I'm going to discuss a few things today that I've been getting a lot of comments on and a lot of, I'd like to have a discussion about, see if we can, maybe try to understand each other a little bit. Most people are still pretty well behind me, and I do appreciate that, quite a bit, and thank you for your support. Um, but I have this guy here, Wolf Beast, you know, basically telling me, well, he's calling me a twat, so that's nice of him. But anyway, he said 999 times out of 1,000 the cops are right. And I'm like, I'm reading that. I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, were the cops right when they murdered Lavoy Finicum? What about when they killed Tamir Rice? Were they right then? Or what about this piece of shit right here, Mark Lofton? Let's go to a local thing. Mark Lofton. He's not my local anyway, but this guy is all over YouTube, Facebook, everywhere. He's pretty freaking infamous because he's out there just arresting people left and right for fucking DUI who aren't under the influence of any damn thing. He's ruining people's lives, costing them thousands of dollars, putting them in cages. All to pad his fucking stats. Then he's gonna cry baby bitch because he got run over. Well, he should have gotten run over. He should have gotten a lot more than that. But, so the cops are always right. I mean, 99 times out of 1,000. So that's like a 99.9%, um, you know, rate of being right. I mean, even Rush Limbaugh doesn't even have that kind of a rate. So, um, yeah, that's just ridiculous. Another thing I wanted to talk about was, well, somebody called me a liberal. So I just apparently, because I don't do exactly what the cops tell me, I'm a liberal. Um, I'm a constitutionalist. I mean, a classical liberal, yeah, but certainly not. I didn't blame it on my skin color. I didn't blame it on my sex. I didn't blame it on my religion or sexual orientation. I didn't want a safe space or anything like that. So I'm honest to God, don't know why anybody would call me a liberal. All I'm asking for is that my rights be respected, that other people's rights be respected, people be treated fairly in this country, and not under the boot of the government. But that's just a little sidebar. But there's something else. I keep getting the comment over and over and over again constantly about driving being a privilege and not a right. And I know there's a big debate about that. There's one side and there's another. The truth is, though, is that I don't ask the government for privileges. The government doesn't grant me privileges. I can grant the government privileges, but they don't grant me shit. I am born with what I have, and I can act accordingly. There are certain things the government can't do to me, and that's what the Bill of Rights is all about. There are certain laws in place to keep you from being a danger to society and whatnot. But driving is a right. Driving is absolutely a right because just first of all, we had the right to travel. The Ninth Amendment, kind of is a coverall amendment for things that weren't enumerated in the Constitution. So it does kind of cover that. But driving is absolutely a right because you know you have the right to travel, you have the right to work, you have the right to do your business on your own terms and whatnot without government interference. They can regulate that right, but no state, no government, nobody can deny you your license if you've met the requirements. The operation, the age, the physical, and the competency of being able to operate a motor vehicle. And we can debate that all you want. I mean, I don't really care. I mean, I don't mind certain amount of control over that. There's I don't know. I mean, I don't want to go straight libertarian on it or anarchist or anything like that. But I think that's okay. But they can't just deny my right to drive based on the fact they don't like what I look like or whatever. I mean, that would be a privilege. A privilege is something like you let your child watch TV, you know, at your leisure and whatnot. If you don't want, if you decide he's done, he's done. There's no nothing. But that's something that you know it's and there's court rulings to back it up and all that. I don't feel like looking it all up. We can, if you want to have a big debate about it, but yeah, we can absolutely. But there's definitely court rulings to back up the idea that driving is a right under the fact, it's just one of your liberties. You have the liberty to be able to use the public roadways, use your own private property, and travel. That's all encompassing. I mean, honestly, you really shouldn't have to have a driver's license. I understand the need for it, but you really shouldn't legally have to have one. And then there was another thing that somebody, well, this guy still, he's like, random inspections are a real thing. I know they're a real thing, but that doesn't mean that it's a legal thing. There's the Supreme Court has existed in this country for, well, ever since this country started. And the Supreme Court for 200 years has been ruling on cases of what's constitutionally sound and what's not constitutionally sound. And there's been back and forth on that stuff because the government doesn't always do everything above board and legally. And just because something hasn't been heard does not mean that there's not an issue with it. So, you have to understand, you have to consider that. It's your job as a rational thinking individual to think about these things and stand up for your liberties and your freedoms and whatnot, because if you don't, the government's certainly not going to do that. They're not going to do that. Look what they did at Waco, Ruby Ridge, things of that nature. I mean, they're not standing up for freedoms. They're not your friends. They're there to make money. They're there to, make arrests, escalate things, and turn things into stats on their sheets. And it's all about money too, because, there's a whole trail of, prisons for profit and things of that nature, policing for profit, asset forfeiture, things of that nature. So, there's all kinds of layers and layers and layers, but it usually always boils down to money. Everything in the world always boils down to money. Everything. Most wars that are fought throughout the history of the world have been, fought over money. But somebody else said something earlier. I forget what it was. Oh, here it is. Proving your truck is safe doesn't have anything to do with human rights. Well, I hate to tell you this, but I don't have to prove my truck's safe. The government has to prove it's unsafe. And that's the disconnect here. We have this issue, we have this idea that I must prove a negative. I must go along and show you that I'm not doing anything wrong. And fuck you, that's not the way our system of government was founded. That's not the way our laws were set up. That's not the way our court system's set up. You must prove that I've done something wrong before you can act on that. And that's just the way it has to be. And unfortunately, we've got so many people out there who think that I have to, that they have to prove something to somebody else. It's like walking out of Walmart with your receipt. Some dildo wants to check your receipt, and you're like, no, fuck you. Are you accusing me of stealing? No, then why you want to see my receipt? It's like, you're wanting me to prove to you that I didn't steal anything by showing you my receipt. Really doesn't make any sense. It's just a silly thing. But, we're not tasked with having to prove ourselves to the government. The government has to prove its case against you. The government has to prove with evidence, with arguments and whatnot, that you have done something to infringe upon someone else's liberties or rights, or to harm someone else. That's their task. Nothing in the laws should force you to have to prove to them what you're doing or what you're not doing. And lastly, we'll touch on this real quick. I keep getting a lot of things about, doing a pre-trip. And people keep calling it an inspection. It's not an inspection. A pre-trip is just a safety check. It is not an inspection. I am not qualified to do an inspection on a truck. When you walk around and you check, 110, 120 things, whatever, I forget exactly how many is on the list. But when you check those things, that is a pre-trip, visual inspection, or inspection. But you are inspecting visually, but it's not a DOT inspection. It is a safety check. Is what that is. You're looking at your tires, you're looking at your lights, you're looking at airlines, anything bent, broke, loose, or missing. You're looking for all that stuff. You check your oil, things of that nature. Look at your windshield wipers, make sure the rubber's not flapping on there so they'll actually work in the rain. Things of that nature. That's what you do in a pre-trip. That has nothing to do with, actually performing an inspection. A DOT inspection, it has to be done by a qualified inspector. And I And no truck driver out there, well, I wouldn't say no truck driver. There's probably some that are, if they've been, maybe they came from doing DOT inspections or worked in a shop or something like that before. But 99% of the truck drivers out there are not qualified to perform inspections. When I first started driving, they would always warn us against putting that on our logbook. We had paper logs. Don't put it on there as an inspection. Just write either pre-trip, safety check, whatever. But don't ever write it on there as an inspection, because some nitpicky ass, DOT officers will see that inspection thing, and then they want to see your DOT credentials or whatever. Your license to be able to inspect a truck. And we don't have that. We're not we don't have the expertise to be able to inspect trucks. That's not our job. And so, no, it's not my job to inspect trucks, period. At an end of story. I'm not qualified. So, that's something to consider when you're making your arguments and stuff. That, yeah, I have a responsibility to maintain a safe truck and all that, but, that's not the same thing. And that's another thing. I think I've said it before. There's nothing wrong with my truck. I didn't have anything to hide. It's about... Well, just because you don't have anything to hide doesn't mean you should talk to the cops or you should do things for the cops. They're not. Doesn't matter. Let's what about another scenario? Let's say I got in that truck and I worked the brakes, and that son of a bitch pinches his fucking finger, in the brake mechanism on the trailer or the tractor or whatever. Do you think that motherfucker would hesitate to charge me with some sort of a crime if I happened to step on the brakes at the wrong time or something like that? He would absolutely charge me with a crime. So it is fucking not a good idea. It's not a good idea for anybody to do that shit. They need to do that inspection for themselves, not me. So, that's just a little update and whatnot, but, it's time to start thinking about the constitutionality of things, and we need to get back to the little basics and whatnot. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being safe. There's nothing wrong with having some oversight in the country. I'm not an anarchist or anything like that. I'm certainly not a sovereign citizen like this dickhead, claimed I am. I do believe laws apply to me, but the laws apply to me the same as they apply to everybody else, and there's not a certain set of fucking laws for me that that don't exist for other people. That's against the Constitution. That's illegal, and fuck you if you don't understand that. But we need to get back to basics and start understanding our basic rights and liberties, and and the government's role in our lives. The government, especially the federal government, should have no fucking daily role in our lives ever. But yet it's increasingly every day they're taking an active role in our lives. The police are out there, doing things. I mean, they're pulling people over and ticketing people for nothing. If you're not doing anything to hurt someone else, you should be left the fuck alone. But that's not the way it is. And you got to stand up. You just have to stand up and start saying, no, we're not going to do this. And it's small things. You can't fight a whole war in one shot. I mean, that's like a suicide mission, so don't do that. But people need to start thinking about how we're going to fix this fucking problem in this country, because it's not going to fix itself. The government is going to still keep taking and taking and taking and taking until you've got nothing left to give. And unfortunately, by the time most people wake up and realize that our backs are up against the wall, we're going to have lost so much that we won't be able to get it back. And I'm honestly afraid that we're past that point already. I don't know, but I'm going to leave it at that. And I don't know how long this video's been on, but hopefully it's not too long this time. You guys have a good day, and I will see you soon.